We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
You got to have the why, and we know our why. So I think
you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people have done this already. You can get help, you can get a roadmap, you can save a lot of time, money, and frustration. Welcome to the Value Add Podcast with K&K.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the K&K podcast. We got Tim Hoover in the house. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Tim, I kind of wanted to bring you on today. Number one is we'll talk about how we met and stuff, but you've got something interesting that intrigues me about you is you work for a family business. You also, the family business has a lot of employees. I know you guys are in the landscaping business, but the other thing that was cool is like you kind of went out on your own and started this little software, which we can go into more about what you're doing. And our podcast is Value Add. So
Right.
You're trying to bring value to an industry that's a little bit like outdated, I guess, in the technology space or non-existent.
Yep.
And kind of like Crystal and I, what we're doing here with all the media and social media, we think this is kind of the way how to build, market and build a business and talk to people. So that's what we're doing. But anyways, tell us about you, a little bit about you, what you got going on, what your family business does, and just a little bit about that,
Cool. Yeah. So born and raised in San Diego, my entire life been here. And so had a really fun lifestyle growing up, surfing and snow skiing and stuff outside of San Diego, obviously. So my goal was to always be able to consistently enjoy that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so during college and out of high school, I was working in the action sports industry for quite some time and representing a bunch of different brands, and shortly realized that I wouldn't be able to raise a family on what I was doing, and I wanted to have some kids. So life became real for me really quickly, and my dad said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" And I said, "All right." So I went to work for my dad. That was 12 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And so when I first started working with my dad, he had a really, really good business. I always tell friends and family that he's probably the best CEO of a 25-person company in the world.
Wow.
He kept it extremely tight. Margins were massive and just had really good customers, but it was a very small company. But that provided, the way my dad ran his work and what he did, provided me and my brothers with an extremely good life. So we got to do everything. We traveled all the time. We went to private schools, and for middle school, we all made choices not to go to public or private school, public and high school, but we had a really good upbringing. And so I wanted to be able to provide my kids with similar, if not better, lifestyles. Mm-hmm. So, so that was a little bit about my history. So my dad said, "Come work for me." So that was 12 years ago. And we've since built the company 10x since then. So we've had significant growth, and we've got about 185, 90 employees right now.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, right? So, for us, it's
I had no
huge.
idea.
That's funny. Yeah.
So my older brother Ryan, after I was there for 3 years, and then he came on board, and he really helped facilitate a lot of the growth. So we retained our business, and we grew the business significantly for a clip of about 7 years. Okay. And then we took a slow down a little bit, hired some key employees to be able to really retain that growth and make sure that everything was in order and the house was clean and solid. And so we just kind of kept the business really functioning and organized, and kind of picked up the pace again and started growing again. So yeah, that's a little bit about
190.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Growth. And it's so cool to see generations, how your dad kind of built this business, and then the new generation kind of comes in, and what you guys can add to that.
Right. Yeah, it's it's a unique perspective when you work with your brothers and your dad.
I'm sure.
So
we were just talking about that.
Yeah. So, obviously with that type of growth and that type of scale and stress and environments and all of that, those types of things that come along with growing a business, comes challenges. So,
for sure.
our goal was to try and keep our family as tight as possible, and not deal with a lot of the stuff that a lot of families deal with. But I don't think it's something that you can avoid. So
can you kind of like dive a little deeper into like what exactly that looks like, what kind of disagreements happen, and how you kind of navigated, how you navigated through that? And it seems like now you're in such a great place, because I remember Kenny did talk to you like probably a couple years ago, and you were going like probably in the thick of it, and now it seems like things are going so well. And like I think there's a lot of family businesses out there that want to see like how the hell did you do that?
Right.
And Chris and I just recorded another podcast talking about like family working together. We were trying to be very transparent. Like, yes, we do fight. Yes, we do this. Yes, transparency, communication,
and like
all
what do
this
you
stuff.
do when that
like,
happens?
We're just like giving it to people, because if you can't get through that, you're never going to be able to take this and 10x it again. You're just stuck, right?
And like you said, your families and relationships are important. Like your relationship with your wife and your kids is really important, but you also like your family's important.
Right.
So it should never get to that point where
it's so I struggled probably the most over the past 3 years. So we grew and we kept it. It was when it was just me, Ryan, and my dad. When we had like really aggressive growth, we were growing at 25-30% annually. Wow. For the first 7 years. So when it was that time, I was talking to my dad about it, actually. We were skiing the other day. That was just a really fun time, because we all knew what we were doing. We all wore the hats that we needed to wear, but we were collectively a part of just being on the same page. And so the challenge with our family business is that there is no exit strategy. So for somebody like me who has an entrepreneurial spirit, I want to see a plan to possibly exit in the future. And so I really struggled with that aspect of the business, knowing that there was no end in sight. So it's kind of like, why are we building this? What are we building this for? Are we building this just to make more money? What are we trying to accomplish here? So the challenges started coming in about 3 years ago when I realized that this is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so along with that came just a lot of maybe personal struggle of what I was dealing with. So to kind of come to the family and say, this is not what I want to do. And
that's tough to do. That's cool you did it, but it's tough.
Yeah.
And some of people just keep making the money and just shut up, right?
Yeah.
And they're miserable.
Yeah.
And so, I couldn't live within my skin and be uncomfortable in that regard. We were making a really good living. We all had really nice houses and just
life was good.
Really good lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, I just would go home not happy. And that's kind of when I decided to go and start moving my life in a different direction. And along with that disrupts the entire thing, right? It disrupts the entire picture of a family business. It's like, hey, what's this attitude that he's got going on? Where's he going? What's he trying to do? What's he trying to accomplish? Why is he not happy with what he has? Is he not content? What are all the things that are going on in his head? And interpersonally, I was dealing with those struggles, but it was starting to kind of trickle over into the family dynamic, which was perceived as a negative thing. And so I was looked at as a bad guy for some time. I've always been outside the box. I've never, what my mom would always say, if you try and put Timmy in a box, he'll do everything he can to break down every single one of those walls. So not just one of the wall, he'll break down every single thing and make a cardboard box explode. So so I mean, it was just dealing with the challenges of being different, not being able to just exist and be in that space. So that came along with some challenges, and a lot of it comes down to doing what you want to do and what's best for you and your family. So, and
that's hard with families. I think like one of the things Kenny and I talked about, even with our families, is like, hey, my family now is, me and Kenny. It's not me and my parents, that like that kind of comes second.
Right.
Or we didn't walk into a business that the parents are running. It's like, it's some way, even if you have all these ideas and stuff, you're like, there's still that respect. Like my dad built it.
Right.
I can't come in here and get the hell out of the way. It doesn't work like that. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah. And that was for me, like, you know, I had a lot of struggle with my dad because, and it didn't change really until recently when I realized that I think the struggle was that I was living in my dad's picture, right? Like this was my dad's painting. Like he painted this picture. Maybe he had the intention that we're all going to come together and build this business. Maybe he'd never thought that, but the foundation of what he had built was his foundation. And so up until recent, I hadn't really been able to take a step back from that picture or really conceptualize that in my mind that my dad was an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so really recognizing that he was an entrepreneur helped me kind of ease my own internal pain that I was dealing with and just say, you know, he's been a fantastic example for me as going into doing my own businesses. Like, but I need to do my own things. But what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, you kind of forget, or I never really thought in that mindset that my dad was an entrepreneur. And so I competed with him.
So it's different. It's like that relationship was just completely different. I mean, when it's like father-son and you're trying to look at him in a business way, it's hard.
Yeah, you're like, you just don't get me. And he's like, I built this. You might be the 2.0 version of me where you're like, hey, you want to do this? I'm content where it is. If you want to do it, then just you got to then go do it. Like, but I'm not. I'll support you, but I might not be there working side by side because he built this foundation. You got to carry it on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you throw two brothers into the equation that are also involved with the business, and you've got a hyper competitive male and dominant environment with complete control freaks at the,
sounds fun.
all running a company together, then it's like you know, it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's not, you know, it can be a recipe for disaster.
Or it can just be like you guys can put it together and it can be a recipe for 10x, 20x.
Yeah. So my challenge as of late is, since I've stepped out of the picture and not fully stepped out of the picture, but I'm phasing out, I've got one foot out the door, is that I am now pursuing my own interests. And so it's challenging for brothers to see, hey, he's leaving. Like, what is he doing? And
do you think it's like an insecurity? Because you're like, what's happening? It's just scary.
Yeah. I mean, it is. There is a lot of like nerve, and, you know, I'm a people pleaser. So it's also like, I want to do this, but I also want them to understand, like, I'm not leaving them.
Yeah, it's not personal. Like, this isn't because I
this
don't
is
like
about
you or
you, not them.
Yeah.
And they just don't get it because they're like, "Well, we have a great thing. We're making money. Come on." You're like, "Yeah, but this is great for you. But my mind, and I can't rest until I do this because there's other things you're capable of and you're already developing. You can't sit still."
Yeah, and so in that, like, the past year or the previous year before, let's say like 17 to 18, I was just in like this dark place and just like, I can't do this anymore. I go home and tell my wife, Camille, just like, I am pounding my head up against a wall. This is not working. I have to get out of here. And I'm making, you know, well over six figures. I'm making some serious money in this business. And it's just like, it was never about it. It's at that point, money doesn't mean anything. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
purpose.
Yeah. There's just, what am I doing this for? Like this, like just, it's so frustrating, and you're trapped. And I felt trapped. And once you put me in that box, I'm going to break down the walls. Right. So it goes back to that whole mindset. So I went to my controller and I said, I didn't want to leave my family. I didn't want to like step away because I am a big contributor to the business. And I said, I've got to figure out a way. We've got to figure out a way to make this work without like this whole thing fracturing. Right. So we created a model. We created a financial compensation model that essentially breaks the business into divisions to where we run our own division of the company.
Smart.
So that way, like a lot, when I went down that pursuit of dividing the company, everybody thought, oh, you're just doing this for yourself. But it was really, if I'm winning and everybody else is on the same page and everybody else is contributing and winning, then the entire brand is winning. even more. So, so we put the financial model in place all year this year. So we're closing out our first year with the new financial model in place. And what it's done has just been tremendous for not just me, but I think everybody else involved in the company, because really it leveled the playing field and it created this, like people say, there's no such thing as fair, like fairness doesn't exist. I disagree. I think that if you create the ability for fairness, then fairness can exist.
The environment for it, yeah.
Yep. So we created an extremely fair platform. So whatever you brought to the table, you contributed from. If you lost work and you decline in your business, you were negatively impacted financially. So you felt the pain if you were not producing, and you reap the rewards if you were producing.
If you are, yeah.
Yeah, and so with two brothers, John, my younger brother, and Ryan, my older brother, the challenge was we're all different people. And so Ryan, my older brother, is like the most consistent person you'll ever meet. He's fantastic at just being consistent, and he's content. And so like an analogy I like to use is like if you put me, Ryan, and John on the side of a shore and we're going fishing, Ryan would sit in his lawn chair, cast his fishing pole out all day long until he caught a fish. He'd sit there, cast his fishing pole, reel it in, cast it out again until he caught a fish. I would literally be out in the water trying to catch the fish, swimming around, running up and down the shore with my bare hands trying to catch a fish because I can't sit in a chair. And then John, my younger brother, would just observe both the ways of how we did things. So he would just be like, ultimately, he's the smartest because he's like picking up the best of both worlds.
Just do that way when you
exactly. When you mess up and you don't ever catch your fish on the pole with your hands, and Timmy gets there, he gets a spear and stabs a fish from the side.
I'll
just do that. Yeah. So so the younger brother, John, is just like this observant guy, and Ryan's the consistent guy, and I'm the crazy guy, or whatever you want to like. You know, a lot of people think of it that way, but really we just are so different, but we needed something to be able to complement each other's styles. And so the model, going back to the financial model within the business, just got us set up to a place where we don't fight as much. We're all able to do things the way we want to do things. And so that's kind of where we're at this past year.
And then you have the software too, right?
Yeah. So
that's pretty fascinating. So talk about that. I know that was this is like your baby, your passion, right?
Yeah. So my goal, I've always wanted to do multiple businesses at the same time. I've always wanted to run multiple companies at the same time. And so I'd started on other business models, and I did some real estate stuff, and it was just, there's never a fulfillment that I had with the way I was running a business, in the regard of running an organization with a lot of employees. And so I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And I just said, like, okay, how can I do what I've been doing and do it again, but also be involved with the other businesses that I have running at the same time? So then that's where the whole idea and premise of the software came into play. So I put together a plan. I didn't even know what software was. Didn't even have couldn't even update my iPhone. Didn't even know how to do your new updates on your iPhone. And so my best friend Brian Whitmire and I had done multiple products together. We started a tool. We created a multi-tool for the landscape industry. We built the prototypes, and then we realized that we're not going to. It took us a lot of effort to make a lot of money off of it. So we shut that program down. Then we started another product, and we started another product, and we just did a bunch of different things together, but nothing that ever really we saw all the way through. And so I called him and I was like, all right, Brian, I've got this idea. I don't know what, and he'd always been harping. He's like, Timmy, we got to get into software. He got his MBA at UCSD Rady School, Rady. So he's a really smart guy.
Yeah.
He was, he's got a crazy story. I mean, like, he was a magna cum laude graduate, decided and went to work for CBRE up in Orange County. He was working under a vice president, making a ton of money straight out of college, and said, oh, I'm going to go in the Army. So he just literally hung it all up.
Oh my gosh.
And not just go to the Army, but he wanted to fight on the front lines. So he's Special Forces Army Ranger.
Yeah.
So his extremes are equal, if not more than mine. Wow. And so he said, all right, I'm going to go to the army, go into the army, give it all up, went in the army, gave it all up to go into the army, which was like the most commendable thing that you could do.
Yeah.
And he just went out and did multiple tours in Afghanistan, fought front lines, like led some serious missions, and came back, and his wife, he got married, and was like, she's just like, yeah, you can't do this anymore. Went back, got his MBA from Rady, and so I called Brian, and he just always like, hey, we got to start a software company. We got to go into tech. I'm like, whatever, just over my head, didn't even register in my brain. And so I'm sitting at my table at my house one day, and I'm just thinking about, I've got to make my landscape job easier, because I like, there's aspects of this job that I like. I like being involved with customers, and I like the sales side of it, but the operational side of it, I just can't stand. It sucks.
Property management in a way. Yeah, similar,
like,
right? Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with some really difficult people, and you've got a lot of customers that are high maintenance, and it's challenging, it's demanding. And so I said, all right, I've got to figure out a way how I can make these people's lives better, how I can make my business more efficient. And so I drafted up an entire business plan in like 48 hours. So I wrote a 5-year software program in a matter of 48 hours, because I lived it, right? So I knew the problem I was trying to solve. I figured out a solution on how to solve the problem. And then, so I called Brian. I'm like, Brian, I've got this software, I've got this idea. He's like, oh yeah, that's a SaaS model. I'm like, SaaS model? What is that? He's like,
okay, whatever.
He's like, yeah, this is a software as a service. Like he picked it apart. He's got it really quickly. And so he just said, yeah, well, let's just have some more meetings and talk about this. So that was 2 years ago. And so we went on the journey of drafting up the product, like figuring out how we're going to build this thing, talking to every person we knew about trying to find the right team, interviewing teams all over the world, India, Pakistan, South America, Costa Rica, United States. And we both were just like, okay, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to be able to control this company from now as long as we can without having to bring on any other partners at this point? And he had a full-time job, and I also had a full-time job. So we built the entire thing. We built a functioning product without any sort of tech background. And so we got to the point where we've got this thing going. It's working.
You're using it currently, right?
Yeah, currently using
How's
it.
Going?
It's fantastic. Yeah,
is everybody using it, or just you and your company?
Yeah. So the way the product works is we have outreach to customers, property management companies, and all the vendors.
It's like automation, basically, right?
Yeah. So we're expediting task completion. So the portion of doing work is what we're trying to speed up. And then also the communication component of, once you are assigned a task, communicating back to the customer that the things that you're doing are getting accomplished, and giving them the ability to actually follow and track your work.
And you get to see it, right?
And I can see it,
me.
right?
Yeah, like you show pictures and all this.
It's kind of like the
awesome
stuff that we remind or something.
Yeah, so I can literally see what my guys in the field are doing, the boots on the ground are doing, without me having to be there. So that right there sped up my internal operational efficiency tenfold. So I don't have to go out to those sites to see what they're doing to monitor and check their work. I can actually just use the system to do that. So I created the internal efficiency. I've gotten to a point now where I hired somebody internally for the landscape company to start taking over my position. So I'd been recruiting him for 2 years. I brought him and finally convinced him to come on board. He's been in the industry for a really long time. And so he is now slowly transitioning into my operational capacity.
Wow.
To where I'm focusing on building multiple brands at the same time. So that's and I wanted to create a product that ran in parallel. So I'm going to replicate the model within other service businesses within the space.
Cool.
And your company with landscaping, which actually I think, because we own multifamily, I think landscaping has actually become more popular and fascinating because of where we live, there's the water shortage.
Right.
So you guys mainly take on massive properties like big HOAs,
right.
things like that.
Yeah. So our landscape company is a commercial landscape maintenance company.
Okay.
So we maintain large homeowners associations, industrial parks, shopping centers all throughout San Diego County. And so our primary book of work is HOA work. And there's nothing glamorous about it at all. But the one thing that we've found over the past 12 years is that we can grow 20% through a recession, and people pay on time, and we have really, really good cash flow. So looking at that model, I am planning on replicating that into different businesses within the same space. So I'm going after multiple service-based businesses within an HOA that service an HOA: tree maintenance, building maintenance, landscaping, janitorial services.
Crazy how much when you really kind of break it down.
There's a lot that goes in.
How many businesses are involved?
And I have to say, unfortunately, a lot of these people have business, but they're not great at the business, and I think it's just because there's some main guy that's not really checking up on stuff, and it's hard. If you could be out there, eyes on the, boots on the ground.
And it's hard. It's just that there's only so much time in a day.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's even the problem. I think people say with HOAs, I don't know anybody who's happy with their HOA management company.
Right.
Nobody likes the HOA.
It doesn't exist.
You can't get a hold of anybody. You can't get anything done. And again, I think it comes down to property management, because I don't think many people like their property managers either. It's not that it's hard work. It's just so many tasks. Like you said, it's like a task management issue. It's all easy work. You just only can do so much, and the business is only so profitable that you kind of have to operate lean and mean, which means that there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't get done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would not ever want to be the owner of an HOA property management business, because so say, for example, you've got one property manager who works underneath you. That one manager is making maybe $50,000 to $75,000 a year. They're managing maybe 6 to 8 HOAs that have 300 units in them. So say, for instance, you got 8 HOAs with 300 units in them. It's 2,400 units that one single person is managing.
And a bunch of homeowners who...
And a bunch of pissed off people all the time. So, and then not only that, think about all the vendor work that is managed, all the landscaping, anything that has to do with maintaining those buildings falls on the shoulders of those property managers.
They're set up to fail, basically.
Right. So they are. I think they are set up to fail, and I think that this industry has tried to just basically dump work onto these poor people who just don't have the capacity to do all of it. And it's and so in that, part of the technology that we built is to simplify those people's lives.
Use technology. So if they do 2,400 units, it feels like they're doing 240 units in reality, right?
Right.
Because it's so you can do it and you can pay them that, but you're going to do it so much more efficient that everybody's going to be happier.
Correct.
Through transparency, through automation and technology, right?
Exactly.
It's really more just being transparent with people, quicker, huh?
Right. Yeah. So one of our tagline for the software company is less process, more progress. So there's so much process involved with removing a tree, right? You guys have a tree that's blocking your view and you pay your HOA fees and you want that tree removed, then you call a manager. The manager may or may not get to it that week, that month, and it just sits there, and you guys are starting to get frustrated. There's a lot of issues with the manager maybe delegating that down to a vendor, and then the vendor gets it. And it's those poor people who are paying their fees, who are paying these HOA dues to live in these HOAs, are sitting around when is that freaking tree going to come out?
And then they'll go yell at one of your guys.
And then they yell at our guys, and they're yelling at the manager, and nobody's happy. And that's just a little microcosm of how bad it is out there in this space. And really, so we saw that need, and we're just trying to solve that from people doing work within HOA space.
Do you think a lot of HOAs right now, are they because of, obviously water and expense and all that? Or are you finding a lot of HOAs and stuff, I'm just talking landscape here, really changing their landscape in general? When we buy buildings, we have old stuff, we're ripping it all out. We're going DG, drip, rock, succulents, because long term, I'm not going to have, it's just get it done, one and done.
Yeah, so that was really good add value for Heritage Landscape over the past 3 to 4 years. The first drought that hit three years ago was probably the most significant add value to a landscape company because of the rebates. So
that's what I put in here. Like the question is like, we were getting them too, like from the state and federal. It's crazy how much you can get back. So I couldn't even imagine HOA how much they're getting back.
Were you doing all that paperwork for them? Too, because it's such a process.
It's definitely.
Are you charging them when you do? Did you just
we just wrap it into the cost of the turf removal.
You say basically we're gonna do all this. Here's the cost you want us to do. Okay.
Yeah. So in 2015 and 16. We removed about 375,000 square feet of turf in San Diego, which is almost 10 acres of total grass within HOAs being removed and replaced with low water use plant materials. So, the drought does definitely offer up opportunity if you look in the right places. So, it was a win-win for us, our customers, because their water bills significantly declined. So, yeah.
And also, like, it kind of offset the cost of upgrading all that landscape, too, right?
Right. I mean, a lot of these HOAs are built in, like, the 70s and 80s, and it's time for facelifts anyways. So, people who are logical and can make sense of, like, paybacks and real numbers, they see that as, like, why would we not do this?
Right.
Then again, you get a lot of people who just see it as a number, and they're afraid of numbers, and they don't really think through the entire process. So.
Yeah. What do you think with you guys in landscaping? What's like the biggest challenge you guys face with these HOAs? Because I know we see these guys walking around with clipboards and they're constantly complaining. I mean, it's hard because there's such big properties. Like, what's the biggest?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really comes down to the people that are. There's always a board of directors within the HOA, right? And most of these people. It's an unpaid position, first of all, so they're all volunteering their time, and all the other residents within the HOA look to those volunteered board of directors to really manage their entire process of how they do business. That's massive financials,
which they may or may not have experience in,
exactly.
By the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of them don't have experience, and they're just power hungry people who make everybody's job miserable. And that's every board has.
Do you deal with those people?
Oh, we deal with them all day long.
So you're trying to convince them to say, "Hey, you guys really need this." Like, yeah, well, and you're trying to say it really makes sense, and they're just sometimes you're just talking a wall. You just can't get through.
Right.
So I'll sit there.
Well, they all have their personal agendas as well on top of it. So.
Well, check this one out. So yesterday, I get a email from this lady. She's 72 years old. She's retired. She has nothing. She doesn't do anything. She walks around her property all day long and finds issues. Right. So prior to having the software, I probably wouldn't have had the documentation that I was able to have that I did yesterday. So her complaint was, it was like a $150 bill of adding seed and seed cover to an area that had been killed off by dogs. So that was like in November. So we did that work. It was $150. And so she sees the invoice coming through and sees like a $150 invoice. And she says, well, I just paid an invoice for September for $150 for the same thing. So I looked up the old, we call them service requests, looked up the service requests, looked at them both. I'm like, no, this is two different areas. I had before photos of the issues and after photos of the issues. So I was able to just email her the service request that had been completed. And she looked at them, she was like, oh yeah, you're right. And versus me like trying to explain to her
or get people involved. Where's the pay? Yeah. It turns into 10 hours of work you did in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and she was happy. She was like, there was no issue. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that. Thanks for the information.
So basically, one of your biggest things isn't necessarily just about landscaping. It's like if you can speed the process up and get back, then the trust might be built there. Because instead of you having to like convince her for 10 hours of you really did this, and she feels like you're trying to pull one over, you have no evidence. You're like, here it is, and she's like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah, it goes back to that, like you were saying, the transparency and accountability. So if you can provide a customer, any sort of customer, not just this space, with here's what we're going to do, here's when we're going to do it, here's how we're going to do it, and here's how much it's going to cost. If you can provide that, do it, follow through with your customer, and nail it flawlessly, you're going to win, and your reputation is going to go through the roof because you're doing what you say you're going to do. So we've kind of gotten, I think technology in some regard has gotten in the way of doing things. I know it's a really weird thought because it's like everybody has an iPhone. Everybody expects an instant response to any email that you send. So it's like this instant gratification world that we live in. So in one regard, technology has gotten in the way. So we had to create a technology to combat all of the additional excess information that exists in our space. We're trying to consolidate that information in one place. So, and we're going to do it within the HOA space with multiple businesses. So we're using our platform, we're using the technology to power
You're going to license
businesses.
it?
Yeah, so we're just going to start acquiring and investing in other business segments within the space and using the software to power it. So we'll control the entire thing.
So you're thinking like you'll own the cleaning company and the
Will you partner with somebody?
So you're going to retain
Yep.
your software in-house.
So your value to them is going to be like, I want to come in and I'm going to bring and I'm going to basically make your life easier. And you might
everybody's life. The property manager's life gets easier. So say for example, you're a property manager and you've got a landscaper and you've got 6 properties and you've got a landscaper on each one of those 6 properties. You now have to deal with 6 landscapers. And so and then that's just landscaping. And then you got your tree maintenance guys. Then you got your building maintenance guys and all your janitors. So some of these property managers are dealing with hundreds of vendors, 50 to 100, 200 vendors at the same time. So the idea is to provide these managers with a better life and simplification of process and offer them multiple services at the same time. So we'll use the software for them to be able to monitor and track and speed up the process.
Yeah, so you're not going to license the software. You're basically going to acquire businesses essentially.
Yep. So there's two different routes, right? So within San Diego, we want to control the entire marketplace within the HOA space, and we will not allow any other vendors within San Diego to use the software unless they pay us a really good number because of the things that it does. But we will start building other markets because a software company was built as a software as a service. So we want to be able to capitalize on the value of the software at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we will go ahead and launch the software into non-competing marketplaces. So like Los Angeles, Orange County, Texas, San Francisco, like big places that have mass HOAs all throughout the United States. And there's 365,000 HOAs in the United States. It houses 68 million people. 68 million people live or own units within HOAs.
Wow.
It's a third of our population.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's exciting.
So our one route is just control San Diego market entirely, prove concept on a mass scale, and then replicate in other cities. But we will most likely sell the software because the value in creating a software is
in the upside. Let somebody else deal with it. Yeah.
The scale on that the potential for scale with software is really large. So
what's your kind of vision plans over the next year then?
Yeah. So I've already started. Let's just say strategic partnership is really our vision for what I'm going after this year, or what we are going after this year. It's not an I. So what we are going after this year is strategic partnership. So we've got a lot of other vendors that we're going to start approaching for partnerships and acquisition. There's a lot of people that have good businesses that need help as far as creating internal efficiencies. So we're going to go in as consultants and fix businesses, utilize our software, power them, introduce them to our network that we've already built, and go ahead and kind of capitalize on all of that process. So strategic partnership is one of the big things, and really just putting together the vendor component here in San Diego. And then we're going to continue to improve the software and build on it. We've got, like I said before, I created a 5-year roadmap and we're only 2 years into it. Wow. So the software just continues to get better and better and better. So we're prepared for competition to come into the space. We're hoping that it happens soon.
Because it helps you get your notice more.
Yep.
Which people don't realize.
Yeah. So we welcome competition.
Because somebody's going to realize there's 2, 3. They're like, why don't I just buy you? I have the money.
Right.
You got used to just get you out and just, yeah.
Yeah. So, we've got a lot of future development with the software, which is really exciting. We brought on a CTO,
Chief Technology.
Chief Technology Officer. We brought him on about 6 weeks ago. He had been consulting with us for the past year. So we're putting all of our ducks in the road to really scale aggressively. over the next year.
And you
so,
paid for this out of your pocket?
Yes, I've self-funded. My partner and I both have bootstrapped this whole thing.
Good for you.
Yeah. The nice thing is, because we built, landscape business and I have ownership there, that the plan is to continue to leverage as much money as humanly possible to build the entire vision. So like I said, strategic partnership in that. The strategic partnership this year means acquisition. And then beyond this year is strategic partnership for taking the software and making it bigger. So
that's awesome.
It's a lot to it. It's a kind of
Wow.
it seems like a kind of big picture, but
no, I remember when I was talking to you how much like nights and it was like you worked your ass off for
for 2 years between running a business and building a business, was working about 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
So.
How was that on your family life? I
Yeah.
guess that's always the question.
You'll have to ask Camille. You'll have to ask my wife. But no,
I think it was tough on you guys. I remember.
Oh no, I mean, I have the most like understanding, patient wife. Like Camille.
That's awesome.
She stuck with me through like all that, just
and now she's seeing
the grind. Yeah. And so
you guys have many talents too. When we were over there, like you're like architecting that building and stuff. You guys are just
Your house is
you're very like methodical dude, just like do or get it done. But you can get focused. You're like Crystal. You get really focused, and you can like just lock yourself in a room and just work on a computer for 20 hours or something. Like, because you're just like that. With me, I'd be like, I'm just not like that, but it's okay. But that's how. But you have to be like that for certain projects and stuff.
The trickle down effect that it has on family is really, really gnarly. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Mikey Taylor. He owns Calming Capital.
Yeah.
I think you've introduced you guys, but I was talking to Mikey about this just because he's in a similar place. He's got 2 young kids and he's building a big capital investment firm, and he does a lot of real estate stuff. But we're just kind of running parallel in life, and we're just talking like we think our lives are challenging. It's the people behind us or that are with us, their lives are 10 times harder than our lives are to deal with people like him and I. So like to deal with everything that's constantly going on in my head and all of the ideas and the constant go and not stopping is harder for the people that are surrounded by us than it actually is for ourselves. So,
I completely agree. Like, she has to put up with me. Holy shit. I'd be like, dude. Yeah, no, I mean, no, I get it. Yeah.
So
we're not easy people to live with, but there's another side, a very positive side to it too, right? So
yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
We have this joke now that like we used to say like the hardest things in life are some of the best things. So
yeah,
now we're like, okay,
that's
well,
right, yeah.
you're a pain in the ass. Well, I must be really good then.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I thought I was working hard. They are working harder than I am.
Yeah.
So just to deal with the instability. So they are the stability. I'm the instability.
Oh, for sure. Right here. Yeah. That's why they always say, I think, when you meet, to kind of wrap stuff up here, but when you meet like successful entrepreneurs or guys, as they say, like the woman behind them is really the backbone, the strength, and nobody gets it, but you get it because you're like, look, like to put up with my pain in the ass and this and that. But at the end of the whole thing is, at the end of the day, you're hoping to, have this plan where at some point you're not going to be grinding and doing this. You can't, like when you're 50 and 60, you don't want to do this. Right. So you're like, now's my time. So put up with me. So we're 50, 60. It's like, we can go enjoy life.
Exactly.
And that's why you're doing it now. Because if you wake up at 50 and you want to do this, you're like, that's a different story.
It circles back to what we were talking about earlier, like even like working with your spouse, but just like being in a relationship or a marriage in general, just like it's so important to be on the same page. And I know it's not always like roses and candy. Like it's hard. Like, and there's disagreements and there's times, and I think that's part of any healthy relationship also. But like your partner being on the same page of what your vision is and like where you guys want to like see your lives and where you want to be with your children and like all those things, it's so important.
Right.
Because then that's your why again. It's like, this is why we do this every day. This is why we sacrifice today, so tomorrow can be better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like in the beginning, I told you like I had a really good life because my dad worked extremely hard. So it's like, and we as parents want that, if not better, for our, like, you know, my thought as a parent is like, I need to leave my kids with a better life than I had. And so
it's not
it doesn't
easy
just
out there.
happen.
It's not easy
No,
out there,
yeah.
right? It's not.
Yeah.
It is becoming, to maintain a life like this, it's getting harder and harder. If
Yep.
not, you just get sucked into the 95 where you're just screwed, you know? And
Right.
we see it every day. So it's like, it's not easy, but those people aren't willing to do the work, and we are, you know?
Yep.
And it is what it is. So
Yeah, there's no drug more addicting than a weekly salary or monthly salary.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
true.
So
No, it's
once
interesting you say that. Yeah.
once you get sucked into like having a salary, you live off of that, and that's what you live by. Once you get into that mindset, then it's like that controls you. So
Yeah. I mean, Crystal's been, obviously, it's like me too, but she's been on her own since 19.
yeah,
And she's a female. It's rare. So it's like
That was a weird thing
She doesn't even
for
know what the
us,
hell
yeah.
that even is. She's
Yeah.
like, what? So for her, it's like
Right.
that drug's never been in her life. But for so many people, it's like, I get it. You and I see it all the time. It's
Yep.
just, it's,
That was interesting too about having employees. Like if you've never really been an employee,
Yeah.
then having employees, you're like, what, vacation?
Yeah.
Sick time? Huh?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, you're like, wait, what?
pick your phone up. I don't have to. You're like, what?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
well, cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, thank you guys for having me.
That was, it's funny. Like every time we have people on here, we're always like learning about them. And I knew, like I said, Crystal didn't know you had 190 employees. I asked you when we were going to the bathroom, like, I knew it was big, but I was like, it's just crazy because when we were at our peak, I was like, damn, that's like so many more people. But
Yeah.
It's a grind, but it's, you know,
I'm excited to see kind of how your software goes.
And the
Yeah,
software's
thank you.
really cool because there's a lot of business owners that want to do those things. They just don't have time. They're so
Right.
inundated in
Or they're not willing to
business.
sacrifice the time
grinding.
like you
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did the hard work.
Yep.
Like building it, and now I think this will be fun for you to see it grow and
Yeah.
like, become something.
Yeah, this next phase will be this next year will be fun to just enjoy the fruits of the labor.
Yeah.
Kind of reset in a way, and then hit the ground running really hard again within the next 8 months.
Cool.
So
Very cool.
Awesome.
yeah.
thanks
Well,
for
thank
coming
you guys
on.
for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Fun.
Tim.
Yeah.
Cool.
46. Wow, we went way over.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I talk.
No, it's good.